Hello, my name is Stephen Kilger. I'm the managing editor at Feed and Grain and the host of the Feed and Grain podcast. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. My guest is Brady Gaalswyk. He's the co-president, co-owner of Easy Automation. He's here to talk to me about automation, current use in feed production, and what it might be in the future. If you're interested in what he has to say and want to know more about Easy Automation, there'll be a link to their website in the show notes. A little bit of housekeeping before we move on. If you have an idea, a topic, a guest you'd like to have on the Feed and Grain podcast, go to feedandgrain.com/podcast. There's a little button there that you can click, and you'll be able to send an email directly to me with your idea. With that out of the way, hi Brady. Thank you so much for joining me.
I appreciate the opportunity to join and talk with you guys today.
Yeah, automation's always been a fascinating topic for me. I've kind of covered it since I've gotten into the industry. And let's face it, if we're going to meet all these people and by 2050, we're going to need automation to really help out with that, especially in this environment. So thanks so much for stopping by, and it's great to talk to an expert. So why don't you meet myself and the listeners a little more about you?
Yeah, so my name is Brady Gaalswyk. I'm part of the second generation here at Easy Automation. That's a little bit about just how I got involved in the industry, and my background is that my parents started Easy Automation back in 1986. We were hog farmers, so we started automation right around the time when the PCs got to be involved in it, and things have obviously changed a lot since then. So my background is that from a family perspective, but as well as I was working with my uncles in a trucking company that delivered to feed mills and grain facilities. So I actually know a lot of same type of people I work with today, but on the trucking side of business, delivering the ingredients or dispatching for the delivery of the ingredients, feel a lot of the pain points around inventory management and that kind of stuff, right? Or documentation, all that kind of thing. So I got to learn about the feed industry from a couple different perspectives there.
Well, yeah, you're the perfect one to talk about the history of kind of automation, huh? Because you've been around it your entire life pretty much in the feed industry. So that's amazing. Yes. What would you say are some of the key breakthroughs that you've had in automation?
When you talk about key technology breakthroughs, it really just depends on how far back you want to look and what's a breakthrough, right? What's breakthrough and what's old news to us now. If we want to talk about previously, way back in time, going from circuit boards and computers to PC based, so having a lot more capacity in terms of memory, a lot faster, much more data collection. I mean, much more back at that time, 30 years ago is pretty relative. But the start of the modern automation as we know it today, where it's kind of a PC, PLC based combined together, and as they slowly did, more and more data over that. Now, as we talk more about the last 10, 20 years, some things are addition of safety and hazard monitoring. The physical hardware components that we're seeing on the equipment is giving the automation just that much more information to make decisions of, know what's going on with that equipment. So instead of simply turning on and off equipment, we're also bringing in the information of how it's running, are there any problems, kind of that troubleshooting aspect. As we continue to walk through a little more recent, if you will, I noticed you talk about controls and automation, and it is kind of, they're the same, but they're different at the same time, right? Controls is a little bit more the controlling of the facility, where automation, I consider it even a little more broad in terms of automation of both the facility and the controls, but just overall processes and human interaction throughout that. So more recently, adoption of APIs or application programming interfaces has allowed the automation to no longer just act as its own little island where it's supposed to make feed, but being truly integrated in with the rest of the operation in the office processes, the business processes, the accounting processes, to be more seamless throughout is some of that. And then another thing that's a technology breakthrough that maybe doesn't even get thought about that much as it relates to specific automation, but the availability and speed of internet in rural areas. Right now, I think we all can say that we have room for improvement on this, but even with that being said, we have come a long ways. So that's had a big impact on our ability to control facilities from a single location, pull data from multiple facilities, as well as from our point of view, the ability to provide remote support and just overall a better customer experience because of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all have phones in our pockets, right? And they all now have, the ability to broadcast their own Wi-Fi network and get service just about everywhere now. So that really is kind of a game changer and hopefully improves over the next couple of years. When I think of automation and kind of history of it, it seems like it's really gone from simplicity, right? Before you have turnkey facilities where everything's manual, and then you go to, it can do this one thing, to, it can do many things. It can go to do many things and also analyze the data from it.
Absolutely.
We talked a little bit about the internet. What do you think of, kind of what's the newest technology out there that you're thinking is really going to change the game for the industry?
On that forefront or on that cutting edge change in the industry is heavy around the data. The concept of Industry 4.0, reporting of data, using that as well as the concept of implementing artificial intelligence to that data. So not only having a whole pile of data at your fingertips, but how to have processes to look at that data and make decisions that are being made by humans because of that data. Some things that I see is looking at preventive maintenance issues where equipment is acting a specific way and it starts to change how it acts. Maybe it's just very slightly on how it changes, or maybe it's just very slightly how it's changed running at this facility compared to, what the norm is across all your facilities. If you had all that data to compare it, you're better able to see, okay, that thing's going to fail in 2 weeks, right? Where now, if we're honest with ourselves, in our current level of automation, we either know that it's working well or it's really starting to have a problem, right? That we, being able to have more access to that data and see those trends and minute changes in those trends is going to prevent things from happening in the future, bad things from happening, I should say. Another way for AI to be implemented would be forecasting and optimizing a facility. When I say optimizing a facility, it's not just how fast is this batching feed, how fast is this pelleting feed, it's what order should be put in here to maximize the throughput, to then maximize my loadout storage, to then maximize my truck delivery schedule. If you have the fastest plant in the world and it's just waiting on loadouts because the trucks are not getting back fast enough, that's not truly helping your capacity, right? It's trying to streamline your entire process is where I see things going.
Yeah, really, really cool. The maintenance part of it alone seems like it's well worth it to me because, especially with the day and age we're in where everything takes a really long time to get to you and manufactured, just knowing that repair is going to be coming up seems like it would make the whole thing worth it to me, at least. I don't actually run a feed mill. I just learn about it for a living. So
I was going to say, you have a lot of exposure. Don't cut yourself short, Stephen. But, you are right in terms of maintenance. As the piece of equipment's gotten bigger, just that many more tons are getting pushed through that single piece of equipment. Just the more that single piece of equipment is being relied on to feed that many more animals, right? So we just got to make sure that piece doesn't fail, or we know what's going to happen and be able to cut off the pass.
You visit a lot of feed mills. You talk to a lot of feed mill managers and owners and everything. What do you kind of see as the opportunity that the industry should really be jumping on now, especially one of the easier ones to do?
When I was thinking about this a little bit, I was trying to think probably more so on at first the far out, the really cool stuff of that's what we should be jumping on. But as I think about what would have the biggest impact on the industry, I kind of think about if you will, step back with me for a second, but the adoption curve, or people call it the innovation curve, where you have those innovators and these are some of the things that they're implementing that are some of that cool new technology that we just talked about, right? But we have just such a big percentage of the feed industry as a whole that you could call the early majority or late majority or even laggers as it relates to this innovation curve and facility. So there are just so many tons of feed being produced all over the country with pretty limited automation actually, right? So maybe they've implemented some of the basics such as a batching system, but we just have a lot to gain in terms of, taking the existing automation of existing facility and just adding, receiving a reclaim, or it's crazy the amount of pellet mills that are still ran manually and people are still watching it and running manually. So things that are not necessarily even new technology, existing technology that we have, but implementing that into existing facilities is a huge area of opportunity. And I think, if anything, more realistic than people sometimes realize. You might think we have an older facility, an older pellet mill. We don't have all that fancy stuff. Well, sure, maybe you can't get it to the level that those innovators are building their new facilities at. But there is a lot of good automation and process improvements that we can implement into an existing facility to really help things out. So that maybe that's overly simplified, but it's truly an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to people still who are almost at completely manual mills and who have not upgraded, and it does seem like I always try to talk to people and to make them know that it's more available than you think, because like you said, some of those older mills, you're like, there's nothing we can do here. Like it's falling apart. It's got a bunch of 20 years worth of feed gunk on it. It's not going anywhere. But yeah, it's really amazing how those small changes can make a big difference, especially the day and age we're in, which, as you know, we're having a big labor shortage throughout, everywhere in the country, but especially in rural communities. So automation, I mean, that seems like the easiest way to kind of combat that. So you don't need as many staff to run such a small facility. What's out there that you think could help with that situation for feed mills?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you're asking for specific or just maybe more generalities in automation.
I want it all.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I got nothing to do today. Go ahead and speak.
We got time, you bet. Well, I can talk about, just maybe some high-level stuff and then some more specifics of these are processes that are being put in. So, a common why in the road that I see at some of these older facilities is somebody that had been making feed manual or almost manually, let's put it that way, for 20, 30 years. And that person did a great job, maybe wasn't comfortable or didn't think that they would be comfortable with computers. So they just kind of did their thing. But they knew their facility based on, the funny sound it made, if something started to clink, right, that they were the automation in their head based on using literally all their senses to run that facility. Well, now they're getting to the age where they're retiring and they're the only one that knows that facility, right? So cooperative or anybody making feed goes out to hire somebody new. A lot of times that person is going to be in their maybe 20 or 30s and not have a lot of experience in a feed mill, not know how something is supposed to sound if it's working right. But they'd be very comfortable running computers, very comfortable in training, learning on that type of thing, on automation systems like we provide. You see that as a huge opportunity in terms of you don't need to have people with all these years of experience and all this knowledge baked in the time. You can simply have a system, train somebody on a system over the course of a couple of days or weeks, and they can make literally hundreds of thousands of tons of feed in a short time, where once was maybe thought that you take 10 years to get to that level of knowledge, right? So speed of ramp up overall. And the benefit of that too is that person's feeling good about themselves, that they're making a lot of feed. They're doing an educated knowledge of running the system. They're not just simply staring at the same gauge all day long, making sure it doesn't go out of this range. So they feel better about themselves and the quality of work that they're doing, not to mention able to do it faster. And then just decreasing manual processes in both changing things or running a facility, but down to truly manual processes. So, I mean, we're seeing more and more people putting in micro ingredient systems, or I'll say larger micro ingredient systems. So instead of having to do quite so many hand ads or bulk bag or tote unloaders, again, to go from 50-pound bags to now 2,000-pound bags, right, and by a forklift, less carrying, less hauling, more loss and weight style to put in like the drugs or even the small ingredients. These are the type of activities that where otherwise somebody would have to do a manually process every single batch of feed that is made. And the more you can, because the pure amount of time that somebody would have to be there just in case they ran one of those batches or actively being involved in every single one of those batches gets to be a lot of hours to cover. So some of those type of processes are some of the things that we're seeing people implement into automation for the labor shortages.
Yeah, just to interrupt you for a second. Well, with like hand ads and things like that too, it's one of those mistakes, right? Because if you do something 1,000 times, eventually you're going to forget or you're going to mess up once, but a machine won't do that.
Absolutely. Or at least it'll record it. Now, we also have handheld stations where it records the actuals. Don't get me wrong. But, not only having the automated added in, but automatically record it, the whole 9 yards. You gain the benefit on both sides, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Another one that I've seen more and more people implement is on the loadout side of things. So there's a lot of facilities out there that we'll call truly manual loadout. Somebody's running up a ladder, opening up a slide gate, watching the feed go in. It's cold, it's windy, you're climbing up a ladder, right? So we're seeing different processes put in, such as camera loadouts, where the drivers can simply load themselves, not have to get out of the truck. Again, makes it just that much faster, easier, safer, right? These are at its core, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, those things all save so much time. And a lot of people think of it that way, right? It's a time saving, but as we mentioned, it's also having a log, making sure mistakes are categorized and done. And then also for everyone's safety, right? There's no reason like you said, some guy needs to go climbing up there in the middle of winter when it's snowing and do all that stuff. There's just no reason for that anymore. Yeah, all those are great examples. Let's talk a little bit. Let's change gears and talk a little bit about where people should get started. Say you've been listening to this podcast and you're like, yeah, we really do need to finally make the jump on this. Where do you suggest they kind of get started if you don't already have kind of a service provider that you're working with? What do you suggest?
Yeah, so overall, I think it would be good to start in. It can be lots of different things. Maybe it means base automation. Maybe it means no automation. Maybe it means pushing electric buttons. But wherever you're starting from, I would reach out to a provider and talk to them about some of the things you're trying to change to implement now. Some of your headaches, some of your bottlenecks, just overall your opportunities. And I would encourage you to share not only what your near-term plan is, but what your long-term plan, right? We all know, especially if you're starting out at basic, we all like to get to point B a lot faster maybe. But if you share that long-term plan and long-term vision of how you see your facility changing over the course of the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, what you expect out of this facility, what different processes you're going to be implementing. We can help design the automation system itself, the cabinets, the whole 9 yards to give input on, so you don't pigeonhole yourself, right? We see that a little bit too often where people think that they're going to just try to do something basic and start out just step one, think they can kind of do it themselves, or just have somebody not experienced in the feed automation. But really, it's best to start out with your end goal, at least as far as the discussion, and then we're happy to start out at that base level and then build modularly. So maybe, again, if you're running truly manual, batching would be a common place to start out with, right? Every single pound of feed is going through the batching process. Not only that, but as you talked about, that's the vital point where we want to record exactly what happened, exactly what we put in there, both for tracking and tracing as well as for inventory accuracy purposes, right? So that's kind of our heart, if you will, and then kind of continue to work out through there. But just knowing the long-term plan, and maybe because your long-term plan is to get automated, that even though you're not there today, might make sense for when you add that distributor to do an electric distributor, to do your setup, this way, so that in the future we can automate more, get your equipment with this type of sensors in it to be able to add later, help you to maximize it in the long run, even though by no means do you have to do it all at once. I'll even say that our norm is even start with very basic and add on systems over time. As your operation changes, grows, can justify the expenses, right? The whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation, right? You can slowly build and get it to where you wanted. And talking to you and companies like you, it's always really fascinating to me because it's not like a lot of other equipment where you buy it and it gets installed and then you don't talk to them unless there's a major problem. With providers like you, it's really a relationship, right? Because there's always going to be updates and there's always going to be things you can do. And you are going to always be there to kind of help them through that. So that's a really important thing too, is to recognize that, especially in this, with automation and control systems, it's a partnership, right? You really do need to kind of and work with the professional you're working with just to do that. And I always found that really an interesting part of you're part of the industry.
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, right? It's not just buying a widget, it's buying a partnership, because you're buying a partnership in terms of that package that you put together for the now, how you set that package up for the future, that person's availability and ability to support you when bad things happen, as well as you're kind of hitching your wagon to a provider that what is that provider putting money back into development? Where are they at today? How are they going to take care of me tomorrow? And where are they going to be at 10 years from now, right? Are they going to be able to get me where I want to go and stick with me as my operation continues to change and grow? And so, yes, it is very much like a partnership, marriage, lots of different words to describe it, right? But yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, especially with digital technology, it never stops evolving. So it's hopefully in 10 years, we'll be talking about completely different things. So it's important to have that long-term relationship. This is a little more kind of a broad question, and it's one that I am really fascinated because the industry's been talking about it for a while, but I've never really seen any in real life, and that's a totally kind of lights out facility that when you go home, that the facility still runs and you can check on it in your phone and it'll send you alerts if something goes wrong, but there doesn't actually have to be anyone there. Are we getting closer to that? I've seen it getting closer, especially with things like these automatic loadouts and things like that are happening. But what's your view on that kind of part of the eventual game plan?
You bet. Well, actually, I was going to mention, because it sounds crazy, but we've actually been doing this kind of thing for several years with literally nobody there. However, maybe on a different scale, but it's on a smaller on-farm type feed mill. An on-farm feed mill where you have more control than in a commercial mill. Feed mills out there currently that the bin tells you when it gets low, it automatically puts an order in, it automatically batches that feed, it automatically. Then a lot of those types of mills then have a blowing system because, again, they're located right there on the farm. It directs it to that proper bin. It automatically blows it to the bin connected to the barn. And so literally nobody's involved with it except for filling up some micro bins here and there. And nobody's involved with it. And or another common example is if they don't have a blowing system, if the same person or a couple of people are delivering the feed as is making the feed. So nobody's actually sitting there while the feed is being made. They might be coming and going just a little bit more kind of thing and out delivering feed. But they're not actually sitting there. They get alerts, text message on their phone if there is an error event or things like that. So it sounds crazy, but some of those things that we actually have been doing on some of those smaller mills, because you have more control and less things, we have already been able to do that. Now, to touch on the larger facilities, or kind of when people think about lights out, is what they truly have in their mind is some of these large facilities that have several to many people running around. I definitely do think it's possible. I guess I kind of view it the same way as I view, honestly, I don't have any experience, but like a windmill farm, right? There's nobody actually sitting at each windmill, much less probably even each location, each field of windmill places. But there is somebody from a central location probably watching hundreds, if not thousands, of different locations throughout the U.S. or the world, probably. So the concept of nobody actually at that facility or several facilities, but maybe one person kind of monitoring several facilities from a remote location as it relates to the high level operations, and then maybe either have it be lights out or maybe have somebody, a little bit less skilled person coming in just to kind of check things or fill bins, do cleaning, that kind of stuff, but have the amount of truly skilled operated personnel potentially a long ways away.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I never thought of that as a possibility because, well, I'm a millennial, so I think of lights out and I think of me sitting at home with my phone running the whole thing. But yeah, that centralized location sounds hopefully like it'll really happen, especially with some of these larger companies that have a lot of different feed mills all over the place. So That's really cool.
For sure. Or at least maybe you're just running the night shift, right? Maybe they have day shifts doing a lot of the things and they doing some more of the administrative work and stuff at the specific location, but maybe have one night shift operator for 3 facilities purely filling all the loadout bins overnight.
Yeah, you're definitely going to still need someone there unless we go get replaced by robots or something. Maybe that's the next step.
Right.
For now,
Right.
at least. Yeah. Someone's going to at least have to be there to sweep up.
Exactly.
There's no way around that.
You bet.
Speaking about robots in our eventual future, what do you think's kind of coming along the line that's really, what future technology out there has you excited about what it can do, especially for our industry?
Yeah, so I mean, we joked about it, but it's true in terms of just increasingly mobile. And that can look like many different things depending on job responsibilities, depending on what we're talking about. But as it relates to the concept of increasingly mobile, so control facility from ordering from mobile, have more of your inventory reporting capabilities or just overall general production capabilities, more easily accessible mobile. Normal traditional manager no longer is sitting at the desk at the one facility and he's the manager of that location. Much more so the case they're moving around. They spend less time at any desk than they do moving around, and they need to have that information at their fingertips to make decisions. So the whole process around feed mill and feed mill automation I've seen become increasingly mobile on that. And then the other one would be traceability. As time progresses, the more feed mills are going to be treated and expected to have the same standards of that of food production facilities. We've already seen that some on organic or non-GMO or some of these maybe more specialty type operations. And I just see that type of thing increasingly become the norm from a traceability perspective is kind of the future that I see expectation. Not no longer a nicety or only for these specialties, but the norm.
Yeah, the feed industry and even the other industry we cover, which is the grain handling industry.
Sure.
For a while, we've kind of gotten away with that being someone else's problem, but we've all been to trade shows the last couple of years, and traceability really is on everybody's mind. So, yeah, to have your systems kind of go in there and be able to keep track of some of that seems going to be necessary, especially like you said with different crop varieties, like just having, say, a value add crop to it. You want to make sure that you're getting what you asked for. So very cool.
And it's a kind of something that is a unique thing to tackle. I mean, we already have, again, on those specialty things, non-GMO, but just the pure aspect of the bulk material compared to, it's much easier to keep track of car tires and what car tires came from here to there, and you can count 4 of them showed up and 5 of them left, right, or whatever. But when you put a whole bunch of different types of grain in a bin and mix it up, and how does it come out, and then what order does it come out? And those are the kind of things that we're working on and have solved some of them, but I think there's room for improvement in the ease of use, how we go about that.
So are there any technologies kind of being used by other industries that you think would be helpful to the feed industry that you don't see adopted very often, but maybe are more commonplace there?
I've seen some in the feed industry and kind of common, but more widely developed or implemented in other industries would be blockchain, tracking and tracing, right? I mean, just a perfect example of when a grain starts at one place, goes to another place, transferred by this truck, goes to this facility, transferred to this feed bin, fed to these animals, right? There's a lot of steps along that process, and a concept or technology like blockchain would help us tie all that together. We're a little guilty of, we can tell you exactly what happened from the moment it came in the driveway as a raw ingredient to the moment it left the driveway or even got to the feed bin. But after it's done with the feed department or done with the grain department or done with the live production, the animals eating the feed department, I think we have some gaps in between those. So,
yeah, definitely. And I blame Bitcoin for ruining the name blockchain in everyone's mind.
I was going to say, I went to Bitcoin and blockchain. I'm like, it seemed a bit different.
Yeah, they're very different, but I remember having it explained to me the first time, this makes sense, versus, the Bitcoin version of it being like gobbledygook to almost everyone's ears. Sure. So, yeah, I also think that would be a great technology. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about while I have you here?
No, I was going to mention, I look back here to my notes about adopting more and an area for improvement. Inventory management seems like a simplistic thing where 2 loads go in. Once you use 2 loads up, you're going to have nothing, right? It seems like a very simplistic thing that all the computer technology you have, but I just see people not utilizing their systems and the information that they have available to them And I think it's a concept of us as providers have to make that information fully live and fully easier to use and better reporting. And those are the kind of things that we continue to push forward, try to make easier every day. But that's just a common area of, I hear from the industry, that inventory management, and we've kind of made our own problem worse, if you will, because let's say we had a mill that was supposed to make 1,000 tons a day when it was built. We're probably trying to push that thing to 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 ton a day now, right? So those bins are going to be perfect amount of storage for 1,000 ton a day production. Well, now we're trying to squeeze that lemon just a little harder than we maybe intended it to, right? So that makes this problem even harder. So I think inventory management and what we can provide there and continue to improve upon is another big aspect. Because again, it doesn't matter how big your mill is, if they're out of ingredient and they're shut down waiting on a truck, it doesn't matter. How good of an automation system you had built in there ready to rock and roll. It needs that product in a timely fashion, right? So that was maybe just a little side note that I didn't mention maybe enough before.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, it's a lot easier when it's tires, right? You have this many tires in and this many out. A lot harder when it's a billion granules of grain.
Exactly, and the concept of shrink and different weights, and that it's a train load comes in and 1,000 truckloads go out or whatever. It's a lot to keep track of. So
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. There's going to be a link to Easy Automation right in the show notes. So if anyone wants to check you out, they can go do so. And I just want to thank you so much for, kind of stopping by and talking with us.
You bet, Stephen. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.